One of the strangest things about living in the current year is that battle lines seem to be drawn everywhere. There are even battle lines being drawn now between performers and their audiences, and those lines are constantly being crossed. It just amazes me that anyone has to explain to anyone else what an audience can and cannot do. In the middle of a speech, or a performance, or a presentation, you cannot take the stage if it's not your stage. But what if you're really offended by what's on the stage? It doesn't matter. The most recent example was the interruption of a Shakespearean play. Is it acceptable to perform a Shakespearean play that features a violent assassination? Well, I would have thought that yes is the obvious answer, but apparently it depends on how the actors are dressed. Now, I can understand someone being offended by the play. That doesn't bother me. But you cannot interrupt an event like that. The people performing the play have the same rights to free speech that anyone else has. I always condemn this kind of action. If it's screeching Black Lives Matter protesters stealing a senator's microphone, if it's college morons dancing the hokey pokey to prevent a provocateur from provoking, if it's a pronoun posse with air horns preventing a professor from professing, if it's the court jester doing a bad impression to keep a buffalo from grazing, or if it's a rebel rabble-rouser seizuring the day. It's all the same. You can criticize, complain, or just flat-out bitch about the things that bother you. You can say whatever you want. But you can't stop someone else from saying what they want. You cannot jump onto that stage and take over. Now, like I said, it doesn't bother me that people are offended by this play. Now, I don't find it offensive, but I think it's legitimate for someone to be offended, especially if that person thinks that this is actually some sort of political statement.
For Christ's sake, we're fucking with the President of the United States.
Oh, he fucks with us, doesn't he?
The justification for interrupting this play is that it's an actual call for political violence.
Bullshit!
For this to be considered a real threat, someone would actually have to say that they intend to kill the president. Either that, or they would have to directly encourage people to kill the president. This performance does neither of those things. You can portray an assassination without calling for it. And I'll do that very thing just to prove the point. Citizens of Rome, under my leadership, we have created the most imperial empire of all time. It's because I am as constant as the northern star, maybe more constant. And I've been told to beware the Ides of March, but I don't beware of anything because the valiant die only once, and maybe not even that much. Et tu, Pepe? Okay, so it's unacceptable to push your way onto stage. Is it acceptable to sit in the audience? Yes, you can sit in the audience and watch. But what if you've been critical of the speaker in the past? And what if there are several of you? And what if you're in the front row? If you are sitting and watching, then you are only sitting and watching. Anita Sarkeesian managed to be completely unprofessional and, in my opinion, entirely hypocritical. I'm not bothered that she threw an insult at Sargon, really. It is a pretty serious breach of her own personal ethics to resort to that kind of harassment.
Shitheads like this dude.
She claims to have felt threatened or intimidated by the fact that her critics were in the audience.
Bullshit!
What exactly was she afraid of? They didn't dress in KKK costumes. They're not waving Kekistani flags. They're not blasting air horns. They are sitting and watching. They are not preventing other people from watching. They're minding their own business. If this had been a feminist event, then it might be different. I don't really think so, but I could entertain that notion. This was VidCon, though, where content creators of every different genre gather together. There is supposed to be interaction. As much as the insults say about Anita, though, I'm more concerned about the way her panel handled uncomfortable questions from the audience.
I'd like to ask a question specifically to Anita. Is that okay?
I mean, yes. I don't know if I'll answer it.
You don't have to. I'm just curious. the various things that you've said online over the past few years, do you truly believe them?
Okay, dude.
All right, this guy, can we please remove him from the question line? 'Cause
Now, that is a confrontational question. But if I were Anita, I wouldn't have dismissed that. In her place, my immediate answer would have been, yes, I believe everything I say. But she was too busy enjoying the authority to push aside and insult her critics.
Why do you guys act like only women face harassment online?
Can we please remove this question from the line?
I banish you!
One of the panel members actually tried to answer that. Not Anita, but there still was an attempt at an answer before he was brushed aside. It was the wrong kind of question, though.
Don't wreck our show, you hoser!
Anita was not there to see people she didn't want to see.
Oh, here comes the Neanderthal.
She was there to preach to the choir, not to be questioned.
It's very depressing to be disagreed with.
You know who she reminds me of? The Queen of Hearts.
I'm just curious, the various things that you've said online over the past few years, do you truly believe them?
Off with his head!
Why do you guys act like only women face harassment online?
Off with his head! Who let all these garbage humans into the room? It's very intimidating. Et tu, Lacey?